carpenter. So you go to the carpenter, you get a coffin. You measure the person, he knows what size coffin to make. He makes it. He got no coffin factory. When the ladies led me down, they said that this is a memorial in honor of Martin Luther King. It was at Bank Street. And we don't want that kind of criticism. I said, I want criticism, but Martin Luther King could have set in motion a whole industry. Now, if a minister say, I want what nothing people make, you know how we want our minister to look good. We went to that sewing machine and made him so many nice suits. He won't have time to make. All of this is contingent on the fact that we need confidence in ourselves, confidence in our institutions, and our ability. We need to regain what we have lost. We need to study history, because we have to understand what we have done in order to understand what we are doing and what we still have to do. We have to understand what we have been, what we are, and what we still have to go, and what we still have to be. My concluding remark is that we can change the world if at first we change ourselves. Thank you.
We're going to take the question and answers now, so if you have any questions, please come forward to the microphone.
I'm going to say something you have to answer. Go ahead. One thing, here's a rumor going around here, and the Arabs help perpetuate that. I see that rumor going on a lot. In the Holy Quran, it says that Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet. But they spread the rumor that he was the first Muslim. In the very book that they got through him, says he was not the first one. It says that the first man, human being, was the first Muslim. Right. That's what the book they got said. But they go on, they say Prophet Muhammad was the first Muslim. And they perpetuate that. They know better. Then there's another thing. The only thing I could see that we have to be in Islam that I have disagreements with is the idea that they are establishing another book that they are trying to put up on a level somewhat next to the Holy Quran itself. And that book is the thing of Hadith. They could establish Hadith on a level where they got to be used in conjunction with the Quran. Then it would put it in the same level of Christianity. It would make it somewhat a political religion. Quran not political, Hadith is.
What's the question?
Okay.
That's okay.
I can understand some of the brothers who said that God made the first Muslim, his name was Adam. I find that utterly ridiculous. Because how can you make Muslims before there was the religion? The religion was extracted from several religions. It came into being so fast it didn't even have time to create any original saints. It was part of it came from Zoroastrianism, Judaism, and Christianity. Many of their saints are the same. Many of their deities are basically the same. And I think Dr. Ben's work, The African Origins of Major Western Religions, is very good on Islam. I know that a whole lot of the brothers can't stand Dr. Ben's interpretation, but it is a good scholarly interpretation. John Jackson has written a book called Christianity Before Christ. It also has an interpretation of the origins of Islam. He also written another book earlier, been reissued, called Pagan Origins of the Christ Myth, which dealing with the appearance of the Christ story in many other cultures. Also, good. But everything we get into has to be pure, and it has to be the first, it has to be all comprehensive. And the brothers quite forget the damage Islam has done in Africa.
Yes, yes.
It was Muslims from the north that destroyed the great nations in inner Africa. It destroyed the nation of Sangay.
Yes.
It's the Muslims in the Sudan right now are literally destroying the black non-Muslim population right now. And not a single Muslim scholar or otherwise would say anything about it. We have scholars who are Muslim, but we have no Muslim scholars.
Think I respond to that. I know like Sangay, Mali, the ancient African empire, they were Muslim. And I know Islam means the way of God.
They were not Muslim.
No?
In the true sense, the royal family was Muslim, so they were listed as Muslim. As for Ghana, Ghana was destroyed by the Muslims. Destroyed by a Muslim house coming from what is now Mauritania, then called the Empire of the Susu, led by a prince of that house called Abu Bakr. He destroyed that country in 1076, ruled it for 10 years. Then he had to pull his army out of Ghana, ancient Ghana, to help his co-religionists in Spain. Then under the military rule of the Almoravids, before the challenge came from the Almohades. And in the process of this move, he died. Ghana gained her independence, but none of her ancient glory. Ghana must be listed as a state whose structure was destroyed by Islam, and not a state that was Muslim. I heard a Muslim scholar that I have a great deal of respect for said that Ghana, Mali, and Sangay was all Islamic states, and that is not true. They were nominally Muslim, but they were never 100% Muslim. Islam never spread to the total population of any of these countries.
Thank you very much, sir.
Dr. Clark, I'd like to say that I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. It's a very simple question. I'd like just to know where I can. You talked about the camel boy asking for reform. I'd like to know where you got your source from.
So from major works written on it, but a great deal of it came from, there's a collection of books called The Story of Nations and Religions of the World. And I've also read English translation of works written in Arab, written by Arabs, translated into English. The best basic books on Islam comes out of all places, Pakistan. And they have created a greater Islamic literature than Arabia itself. Now, the story of the Prophet Muhammad is in at least 100 books. It is basically the same.
They would tell you that Bilal, because from my understanding, a lot of people would say he was given this knowledge from God, and no one ever taught it to him. And from all the books that
well, that's the way you never say that a deity was taught. Now, we have to understand the creation of gods. All deities are inspired by God, in spite of the fact that no outstanding deity, except Buddha, who came from the middle class, were formally educated. And there's no proof that Christ could read. There's no proof that Prophet Muhammad could read. It was inspired by God. With what God?
So you're saying
I don't. I tell you another thing. No deity has a grave. They all ascend in death. So to create a religion, you've got to create a mystique and a mystery. I am not less. I'm a very highly spiritual person. I used to be a Baptist Sunday school teacher. I hold all organized religions in contempt because they're people by hypocrites.
Go ahead, teach.
I don't need nobody needs to teach me the 10 Commandments. I got enough common sense to do that. I ain't gonna violate my neighbor's wife anyway. Because I got one. Stealing requires too much time. And I'm gonna kill anybody unless I feel like I can basically get away with it. It don't make sense. Sitting in jail don't make no sense. I got too many things to do outside of jail, so I don't want to go. But I got enough common sense to conduct myself in such a way that I don't need no minister to preach no 10 Commandments to me. Besides, they were taken from Africa in the first place.
Thank you. Dr. Clark, once again, thank you for the enlightenment. You, I know, can talk very eloquently about going into the 21st century. And we are on the fringe of going into the 21st century. And my concern is that we are worse off going into the 21st century than we were coming out of maybe the 14th or 15th century.
Coming out of the 19th century, you'd be good. You'd be more correct if you said coming out of the 19th century, less than 50 years after slavery, we were better off psychologically, economically, and educationally than we are right now. That is true of the West Indies, that's true of Africa, that's true of the United States, that's true of South America. That's true of the black position throughout the world. We were much better off. We are so psychologically confused right now. Even if an economic apparatus was in our hands, the competence to manage it is ours. We came into the 20th century boldly believing in ourselves. The Africans believed in themselves because for 100 years they had kicked those Englishmen behind. All kind of wars, and they had run them. They didn't go to England under the chandeliers and the cocktails and get all confused with the smiling British woman. They didn't get all confused about that. They picked up their spears and their shields, went to the field and kicked back.
Right.
Well, you partly answered the question. My concern was what suggestions, or would you reflect on where you see Africa, what's happening in Africa for the 21st century based on its present condition?
First place, we have to realize that Africans did not come to power after independence. They were Europeans in black face. And there is not a single government in Africa modeled after the African concept of consultation with the people. Modeled after the African concept of morality in court. The African concept of evidence. And the whole concept of the council of elders that we imitate here without understanding. That an old man literally became a judge by the fact he lived long enough to understand. And he didn't have to go to law school. He lived 50 years in the village. He knows the laws of the village. He knows the people of the village. You have a court, he's the judge because he lived long enough to be. Now we got some farmer people. I've had 2 encounters with the civil court, and I would rather be tried among the worst savages on earth.
Thank you.
Because justice has nothing to do with law. Justice has nothing to do with whether you violate a custom. I mean, as we go into the 21st century, if we don't gain confidence in ourselves, the ability to manage our own community, the ability to choose a good curriculum for our children to study by, if we don't do those essential things, we might as well just make a deal or go out of business as a people. Because otherwise, no people are going to survive until they first protect themselves, which is not only a right, it is a responsibility. We have to start with our community. If you're going to learn how to run a nation, you just start how to run a candy store. If you're going to make a locomotive, first see if you can make a safety pin. Work from that. Remember now, all you need to make 10 locomotives is 1 locomotive. take one locomotive, break it down. Said, Johnny, you make the wheel. Matt, you make the motor. You make the stovepipe, engine pipe. You make the other mechanism. You assign all those different parts to different people and put it all back together again, and you got a train. You need one example. Now, it's the case, the story I tell often about a Japanese came to MIT, was humiliated, and had a bigoted teacher who always said, you Japanese are always imitators, you can't do this and you can't do that. The Japanese didn't argue with him. He didn't call no demonstration. Either you call him a dirty racist, MF, nothing like that. Got ready to graduate. He said, I'm going to give you something I bet you Japanese cannot imitate. Gave him a $1 Ingersoll watch. There used to be a $1 watch in America that worked. Gave him this watch. Can't imitate that. He went away. 3 years later he came by and asked the teacher, gave the teacher one of the Japanese version, and then he asked permission to address the class. And he said, yes, you know. He said, the professor challenged me to imitate the $1 Ingersoll. I've got a pocket full of the Japanese version of the Ingersolls, and I'm selling them for 50 cents, and I'm making 17 cents profit. He didn't go home. He didn't call no demonstration. He didn't call the Japanese equivalent of the NACP. He went home, went to the drawing board, broke that watch apart, reproduced every part in smaller dimensions, put it back together, and he had a cheaper watch. Now, if we did something like this instead of holding so many demonstrations and blocking the UN and all that stuff, let's go to work. Yeah. Pick up a textbook and learn.
Yes. You spoke to the ancient Hebrews when they entered into Egypt and how they were nurtured and taken in by Mother Ethiopia or Egypt.
Egypt.
Yeah, and I was wondering what was, to your understanding, the racial